What's up, my friend? Welcome to the Finding Direction podcast. My name is Stu Massengill, and I'm here every single week to bring you a passionate guest or message dedicated to helping you find your purpose so that you can live a life full of passion, fulfillment, and happiness. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for hanging out with me, and let's dive in. What's up, my friend? Welcome back to another episode here on Finding Direction. This week, I am sitting down with my new friend, Cheryl, and a little bit about Cheryl. She is a content creator on Instagram, also mainly on TikTok, and really what she's doing through all and every platform that she's on is she is advocating for autism and educating people on everything and anything about autism. So on this episode, a few things that we dive into is what is it like to have autism? Obviously, growing up and not knowing that she was diagnosed, what that was like. We talk about what you can do if you know someone who has autism, some of the best practices for yourself or to support someone. And we also talk about why you have to truly step into being your true, authentic self and the power that comes when you step into that chapter of your life. There is so much goodness in this episode. Cheryl, and you will feel this in our conversation, has just a beautiful core, a beautiful spirit, and is really doing some powerful and important work in this world. So I know you're going to enjoy this conversation. If you know someone who has autism or who knows someone who lives with someone who has autism, I would encourage you, send this episode to them. They will thank you for sending it their way. And if you have not already, make sure you smash that subscribe button so you can hang out with us every single week on this podcast. All right, my friend, without further ado, here we go. Cheryl, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So as we kick this thing off, I've obviously dove through your story and your journey a bit, but I would love it as we kick this thing off if you could give our listener just a little bit of an idea of, who is Cheryl, what do you do, and just give them a little bit of an inside look into who you are.
Hi, I'm Cheryl. I'm an autistic content creator, mainly on TikTok, but I'm over on Instagram too.
Yeah.
So I kind of make content about my journey as an autistic person. I was diagnosed when I was 20, so it's been kind of a journey to work out who I am and what I can do to better support myself and kind of reestablishing my life after that diagnosis, really.
Yeah.
So I kind of make content, positive content about autism to kind of inspire other people and give other people hope, because for me, I found it really difficult when I found out I was autistic, and I don't want other people to feel the same way. So I kind of give them a space to go to learn about autism and also to learn that it's not a bad thing, and that everyone should be proud of themselves no matter who they are.
I love that. So beautiful. So if we go back then in your story, right, and we go to, really when you were growing up, obviously your diagnosis, I believe, was you were 19 years old.
I was 20.
Okay, so 20. And so if we go back to growing up, I would just be curious to hear from you, what was life like as you grew up? Obviously, when you were diagnosed with autism, it helped so many things in your life, and it's really brought like a beautiful thing to your life. But I'm curious, if we go back before that, could you just share with us, like, what was life like for you as you grew up and you were kind of really finding yourself?
Yeah, so I suppose my childhood was okay. Like I remember I was an avid dancer, so I used to dance all the time along with school. So that took up a lot of my time, and I did really enjoy it. And then I hit my kind of teenage years, and being a teenager is difficult anyway.
True that.
I really started to notice that, well, I don't know, like it was difficult. I was having a hard time with my mental health, and it was like taking a lot of toll on my self-esteem. Like I remember at school, I used to, you have your different friendship groups, and I used to watch people from afar and try and work out what they liked and how they communicated, and then like do the same so I could make friends and stuff like that. And that was a really difficult journey, because I felt like I didn't really have any true friends. I was kind of going between people and groups. And it really started to impact my mental health. I really struggled with things like depression and anxiety, and just not really feeling hopeful, I felt like I didn't have a
Yeah.
purpose. I ended up in a hospital a couple of times because of my mental health, and it was just a really difficult journey. Um, but when I got out, like 18 time, I was kind of feeling a bit better, I was
Yeah.
feeling more hopeful, and I'd got support for my mental health, and things were on the up. And then I started university for the first time round. Unfortunately, I've
Mm.
done 2 degrees. um,
Nice.
and I again found it really difficult. Like at this point, I was meant to be an adult, like I was meant to have a job and doing my
Right.
degree. And I couldn't balance the two. Like working was so important because I needed the money to live, but
Yeah.
I also needed to do my degree. And they were like, my degree was full time and I just couldn't manage them both. But all my friends could. And I was like, how? Like, how do you have the energy?
Yeah. Yeah.
I only have energy for one, if that. Um, so again, I really started to struggle with my mental health because I was so burnt out, so tired. And I was like, when does this end? Like it just
Yeah.
seems to keep going on and on and on. Um, and my university went to me, well, have you looked into autism? And I was like, well, I
Hmm.
did when I was younger, but that was quickly brushed aside. So I haven't really revisited that. So I did a bit of research,
Hmm.
especially focusing on autism in women and non-binary people, like how it can portray differently and how often we're not diagnosed until later in life. And I was like, wow, this is really relatable. So I
Yeah.
went to my doctor, and she referred me for an assessment, and that's kind of how it started, really.
Hmm. So if you were to like look back, let's say at your younger self, knowing what you know today about autism and all the, just spreading of the autism awareness that you do through social and through everything in your life, really, if you were to look back at yourself, are there a few things that you could pinpoint now to say, oh, like if I knew what I knew now and I look back and I saw that those were 2 or 3 things that I struggled with or that I did, or, just was there anything that you could look back at and say, wow, if I really knew those 2 or 3 things, I would know that maybe, I did have autism and that I could start to learn more about it. Like, were there a few things that you could pinpoint?
Yeah, definitely. So as a person, I'm quite sensory sensitive. So
Hmm.
a lot of like bright lights, loud noises, kind of like they can panic me and they can overwhelm me. And this is something I've obviously struggled with throughout my life. So when I was younger, like my mum used to hate taking me shopping because obviously you've got the bright lights and it's crowded and it's busy.
Yeah.
And I would get really tired and she would say grumpy and overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And looking back, I was like, wow, that was just me being autistic and like
Yeah.
being in sensory overload.
Hmm. Interesting. So when you eventually then, you go meet with some people, you learn this is autism. What were some of the biggest lessons you took from that? That, I mean, it sounds like so many light bulbs have gone off just for your mental health, for your purpose, for so many things in your life. So what were some of the big lessons that you got once you realized, oh, like this is autism, and now that I know what it is, I can like do something.
Yeah. So when I was first diagnosed, I found it really difficult because in my assessment, the nurse that diagnosed me, he kind of said that if I had known I was autistic earlier, then maybe a lot of the mental health difficulties or the traumatic hospital admissions I had wouldn't have happened.
Hmm.
And I found that super difficult to kind of cope with because that was like a big chunk of my life. And to have someone say that, it hurt a lot. And I was quite sad to begin with. And I wasn't proud of who I am. I was like, oh gosh, this is like another thing that I have to deal with.
Yeah.
Um, but through learning through other autistic people and learning more about autism, I kind of realized that this isn't a bad thing. And there's actually things I can do to help myself. So I started like making sure I recharge and I'm kinder to myself because before I was just trying to, have my uni degree and do a job and like work myself into the ground. Whereas now I realize actually I need to pace myself
Hmm.
to better
Yeah.
protect myself and that it's okay to be who I am. And I know why sometimes I get really anxious and sometimes I get overwhelmed by like lights and noises and, but I also know that there are some good things like I'm a student nurse
Yeah.
and like I think my autism really caters to that. Like I'm really compassionate and caring and have a
Hmm.
lot of empathy. Um, so it's a balancing act. There's good and the bad.
Yeah. What's so interesting that I hear when you mention this is it's you, like once you learn about this diagnosis, you have an unbelievable amount of self-awareness. And I think, whether our listeners listening to this and has autism or doesn't, like what a beautiful lesson to give to someone to say, learn about yourself. Like when you said, oh, well, when I get anxious, I know it's because XYZ is happening. Um, and I'm curious for you and for our listener as well, what are some of the ways you first grew your self-awareness? And how do you think other people can do the same? I mean, it seems like it's such a gift. You know why you may get anxious. If you need to slow down. If all these different things that has allowed you to build a better life for yourself. So, how have you done that, and how do you think other people can build self awareness?
Yeah, so I was quite lucky to begin with. I had an autism specific charity helping me out. Like I had a support worker who kind of like helped me
Nice,
through that diagnosis process and was like,
amazing.
yeah, exactly. Like you're doing too
Yeah,
much. Like you need to just chill out a bit. I was
yeah,
like, oh, okay. So I gave it a try and it worked. Um, so that was good. But I only really worked with them for a little while. So since then, it's been a lot of like trying to learn through the community. So I learned
Hmm.
so much, through TikTok, which is funny because that's what I do.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, but when I started out, I was like seeing so many different autistic creators and learning so much about autism and
Huh.
seeing people were proud of themselves, and that made me feel good.
Yeah,
Um, so I kind of tried to do that with my content, and through making my own content, I've been able to learn way more about myself.
yeah.
And I found it really helpful. Like I've been so much more confident since then, and I just feel proud of who I am, and I'm so lucky that I feel able to now spread that message because to begin
Yeah.
with, it was quite rough.
Yeah. So when did the switch flip for you then? So you're, going on social, you're seeing other people talk about this, you're learning about it, getting educated about it through other creators. And at what point did the switch flip for you to say, you know what? I'm gonna I'm gonna start spreading awareness through this. I'm gonna start, like really getting serious about this. Because it sounds like at that moment was when you started to really open another chapter of purpose in your life.
Yeah, so I feel like probably end of 2019, beginning of 2020, it was coming up to Christmas, and as an
Yeah.
autistic person personally, I found Christmas a struggle. I really do struggle with all the socializing and the change of routine and everything, but everyone else seems to really enjoy Christmas. So
Hmm.
I wanted to make some content about, how I found Christmas difficult, but here are some things that other people could do to support autistic people.
Yeah.
So I made that content and it performed really well. And people were like, oh, finally someone's talking about this.
Huh.
Um, so, I was like, oh, that I enjoyed that. That was fun and kind of left it,
Yeah.
like you do. And obviously the pandemic hit, and that gave me a lot more time to kind of think about who I am and the way autism affects me. And I kind of just started to share this journey. Like
Hmm.
one of my first like popular videos was like me starting to unmask my autism and like be myself more on camera. And that then enabled
Wow.
me to be myself more in real life.
Yeah.
Um, and I'll always be so grateful for that. It's kind of interesting though, because I'll put a content out online and be who I really am, where anyone can judge me, but I wasn't doing
Yeah.
that in real life. It's interesting.
Yeah. It is very interesting. And what a, just showcase of your courage, right? To say, hey, I'm gonna put this where anybody in the world can see this and just be myself. So it's beautiful to just see the courage that you had to be yourself has led to you being so much happier and joyful and just having a better life.
Yeah, that's definitely it. Just having that courage to be who I am and letting other people see that. It's completely changed my life, to be honest. I'm a lot
Yeah.
happier.
Yeah. And isn't it such an interesting thing, that sometimes, and I've been there myself as I was finding myself in my own life, but it's such an interesting thing that you can go through life and it's almost hard to be yourself sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that's really sad, like especially growing up, because I feel like when you're younger, especially, people are judgmental, and you feel like you have to be a certain person and fit into a certain mold.
Yeah.
But when you kind of grow up into your like, starting out in adulthood, you start to realize that actually none of that matters. And what matters is your happiness and
Yeah.
trying to be who you are. And it's a journey. Like I didn't just wake up one day and was like, right, time to be myself. Like
Yeah. If
it
only.
was such a long journey. And like I'm still in that journey. I don't think it ever ends.
Yeah.
Um, I'm constantly learning new things about myself. And sometimes I have to remind myself, like, hang on a minute, Cheryl, like you're doing too much. You need to slow down again.
Yeah.
So it's a journey.
Yeah. And I think there's a piece of it too. And, for our listener right now, I hope they take a moment to really ask themselves, like, am I being myself, my true self? And if you're not, maybe this is a sign to step into your full self and be your full self, because I think when you can just live life as you, man, it's like a fresh breath of air, right? It's like, I don't have to try to do this or worry about that or pretend this. It's like, I can actually just be me. And I think a huge piece of it as well, which sounds like was a part of it for yourself too, is finally letting go of judgment of other people, right? And saying, I'm not going to care what this random person thinks or what my friends think or what my parents think. Like, I'm just going to care about what I think about myself. And when you can make that shift of saying, I'm going to care about what I think about myself versus what other people think of me, it's hard, easier said than done. But I think when you can do that and really step into being yourself, it is, I mean, like you said, it's life changing.
Yeah. Like I completely agree with what you've said. And like at first, well, I always felt like as a person, I didn't have many friends. And maybe that was because I wasn't being myself. But since
Mm,
being more myself, I've surrounded myself with people who love me and care for me and who like
yeah.
me for who I am. And they seem to like represent who I feel I am as a person as well. So not only have I started to be myself, but I've started to surround myself with people that actually care about me and represent me and have my back. And that's just amazing because it's something I've never had before.
Yeah. And they like you for you. It's like now you have people that you're surrounded with and you get to be yourself, and you attract and you draw people into your life that like you for you and you like them. And it's like, it's just such a beautiful combination when yeah, you step into who you are, you attract people around you that are actual friends, people that you can actually be in alignment with. So a question I would have for you then is, our listener right now is going, okay, I need to, like, I need to just be myself. I need to let go of the judgment. I need to step into just being me. Like, what are a few pieces of advice you could give our listener to just own being yourself?
So what I would say is start small. Like it's a journey. We can't be, making massive changes straight away because that's just too
Yeah.
much and it's too overwhelming. So
Yeah.
start
True.
small, start doing little things that you can do, whether that's trying to schedule in some more like recharge, like chill out time, or whether that's trying to talk to some of your friends about interests that you have that maybe you're ashamed of. Or, for example, one of the first things I did was through unmasking. I've always wanted, I do stimming, which is a behavior that autistic people do to kind of help regulate their emotions. And it can be a movement or a sound or visual, whatever. So one of the first things I started to do at work was like these little stims with my hands that no one could really see, but like it helped
Hmm.
me get my emotions out and kind of regulate that situation. Um, and that led me to feeling less overwhelmed and it helped, and I started to
Yeah.
wear more brightly colored clothes to see what
Yeah.
people thought. And like no one would ever say bad things. Like if anything, they're like, oh, I love your outfit. Like, where did you get that from?
Yeah.
Um, so it's like small things.
Hmm.
And these small steps kind of build up to bigger process. And you don't need to do like 5 small steps. You can just start on one tiny thing. But that is the
Yeah.
start of your journey. At least you're starting somewhere.
Beautiful. I love it. So let's say there was one message you could give to the world about autism and what you wish people knew. Everyone in the world, you give them one message. What would that one thing be?
I think that one thing would definitely be that it's okay to be autistic. Like growing up, all the representation I saw of autism was negative.
Hmm.
So it was kind of hard going through that journey because I was like, no, this is something that is bad. When
Yeah.
it's not. it's just a different way that our brains function, and there's nothing wrong with that. So that is my main message, that it's okay to be autistic and it's okay to be yourself. And it's so important as well, like you are the most important person out there in your own like solar system, you know? So
Yeah.
you need to take care of you and you need to be who you are. That's the most
Yeah.
important thing I would say.
I love it. And what can someone do if, let's say, they have someone they know in their life who's autistic? What are a few things people can do to just support?
Yeah, so there are a lot of different things that someone can do, and it all depends on the person too. But
Right.
some things that I would say is, try and have a conversation with them about things that you could do to better support them. But it's not even that. You could go as something as easy as just talking to someone or engaging with someone about their interests, the things they like, because some autistic people have really these interests that they absolutely love, and they'll talk about them until the end of
Yeah.
time because they love them so much.
Yeah.
And it's great. Like, that's not a bad thing, but it's a really great way to connect with someone. Like, I would love it for someone to come up to me and talk about planes. I was speaking
Yeah.
the other day to someone, and he was like, "What things do you like?" And I was like, "Oh, well, airplanes. I know it's a bit silly, but I like airplanes." And he was like, "Oh, my favorite plane's this." And I was like, "You know your planes?" Like, and that made me
Yeah.
happy because I like planes. And it's just such an easy way, like whether that's taking someone to spend time with their interests, whether that's, I don't know, elephants or whatever their interest is, or buying them a little gift that represents their interest, or just talking to them about it, or doing something with them that represents that interest, is a great way to really start better supporting that autistic person.
Yeah. Love it. So finding out what they enjoy, what they like,
Yeah,
and just allowing them to live, talk about it, experience it, whatever it is around that.
yeah, exactly.
So cool. So then as you go through, obviously you're a content creator, spreading a beautiful message, helping grow the awareness around autism. And as you go into, I'm curious, the next, let's say year, 3 years, 5 years, maybe even decade, what are a few guiding principles that you live by to continue to find your direction?
Yeah, so definitely something that motivates me is I like to try and live my life the best I can and to the
Mm.
most of my abilities. So one of these ways this comes across is I like to travel, which as an
Yeah.
autistic person has its extra challenges on top. But I love to solo travel. So I am
So
constantly
cool.
thinking about the next trip, where I'm going to go, how I'm going to do it, how am I going to fund it. And I absolutely love that. And I think that helps me grow as a person as well. Because every time I go on one of these solo travels, some things always happen. And I'm like, I learn
Yeah.
more about myself, things don't always go right. But I like that problem solving dynamic. So that's definitely one of the things. And I think just continuing to be who I am and make my content because it makes me happy, but also try and focus on other parts of my life, like my friends and doing the things I love, like concerts and
Yeah.
adventures and stuff like that. And I try and stay more in the moment, like what helps now and what can I do in the near future that will make me happy. Like, I think the work-life balance is so difficult to get, um,
Yeah.
especially as I'm about to go into my nursing. But it's
Yeah.
just so important for me to keep remembering, actually, I need to just do some stuff that I like to do for myself,
Yeah.
whatever that may be.
Yeah. I love it. Do you have a process that you go through to sort of just make sure that you're continuing to check in with yourself, or like, yeah, any sort of weekly, daily process where you're like, okay, Cheryl, like that we know we need to slow down right now, or we know, I need to add more of this in my life. Like, are there any processes that you have like that that maybe our listener could add to their own life?
Yeah, so like my main one's probably journaling. So
Hmm.
I have a bullet journal that I
Nice.
absolutely love. And I like to like make all the different pages on it and make it look pretty, but also it's an amazing tool for me. So when I first started out journaling, I noticed that I was talking a lot about what I did during the day, but not about how I felt. And
Hmm.
that was kind of difficult to keep track of my actual progress, because it was like, well, I did all these things, but how did I feel when I do these things?
Yeah.
So I kind of revamped my journal this year. It's a bigger
Hmm.
journal. We're now into A4 because A5 was just too small for my thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I now really make a conscious decision to talk more about how I feel and my
Huh.
feelings so I can keep track of how I'm doing. Like if I'm feeling burnt out, I'll be able to tell because, I might be saying how stressed I am. Um, and if I'm doing good, then I might be talking about how much fun I had. And also within my journal, I have like a habit tracker. So I'm able to like track things that I find helpful, like, time
Love it.
away from my phone and prioritizing myself and stuff like that. And I can track my mood in there as well. Every day I rate myself on a smiley face scale to see how I'm doing.
I love that.
Yeah, so that is the main thing that really helps me keep track of how I'm doing. And it also helps me express how I'm feeling at the same time.
I love it. And do you do it in the morning or you do it in the evening?
So I do it every evening, and it's just great
Okay.
because I can open it up and I can write about my day and all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And I think it helps me sleep as well because I'm like got all those thoughts
You're
out of my
just
head.
getting it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So cool. I love it. Well, Cheryl, it has been just a joy to dive through your story. And thank you for just so much wisdom and everything that you do. I'm curious if our listener wants to hang out with you more, get to know you, spend more time with you. Where's the best place for them to find you?
Yeah, so the best place to find me is on TikTok or Instagram. And my username on both is _ this line is mine. You can find me over there for all the bright colors, positivity, and autism
Yeah.
awareness.
Love it. Love it. And so my last question for you then is a question we ask for all of our guests because we want to help people find direction, but we believe in doing it through action. And so my last question for you would be, what is one thing that our listener can do in the next 24 to 48 hours to start finding direction in their life?
Oh, this is an interesting question. um, I would say maybe just take 5 minutes out of your day to check in with yourself, like really check in, like just ask yourself, how am I doing? And that can be a scary thought because my brain
Yeah.
automatically goes, well, I don't know, I'm fine. But like really dive
Yeah.
in, like, how am I doing? How am I feeling? And that is a good place to start because once you kind of work out where you're at, you can
Yeah.
work out where to go with that.
Beautiful. Love it. Love it. Well, Cheryl, thank you again so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your story. And we're looking forward to see what you continue to do.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Congratulations, my friend, on crushing it through another episode here on Finding Direction. Make sure to give yourself a pat on the back, a round of applause, because you are one of the few who is not willing to settle for less than a life that lights up your soul, and that is absolutely something worth celebrating. I want to say thank you for joining me on this episode. I hope you got massive value from Cheryl. And truly, I know I said it before, I'm going to say it again. If you know someone who has autism or you know someone who lives with someone who has autism, make sure you send them this episode right now because it's going to add massive value to their life. Thank you for being here. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will talk to you on the podcast soon.